All right, welcome back to another live. I am your host, Joseph Lewin, and today I'm joined by Ari. Oh, shoot, I didn't ask you. Ari Son?
Sohn.
Ari
We're on a
Son.
first
Oh.
name basis. It's okay.
Oh my gosh. I always ask that question. I didn't. Ari Son. So, Ari, welcome to the show. Ari's a community and ecosystems at TextCart, and I met Ari a couple weeks ago at an in-person event. So it's fitting that we're talking about hosting your own in-person events. So Ari, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, Joseph. Yeah, it's funny how the world works that we met up in Kentucky at the Innovate Festival hosted by Brian Wallace, and just felt that there was a certain energy that drew a certain particular type of person there. And I know what that says about us, but here we are just several weeks later.
I love it. Yeah, so before we dive in, this show is sponsored by Sell Through Social, which is my company, and I am launching a show and 30-day challenge starting August 5th for $497. So if you want to launch a live show like this to build relationships with the people you want to know or deepen relationships with people who will move your business forward, reach out to me. I'd love to get you started and get your show launched. But today Ari and I are talking about launching in-person events. So I've, for a long time, wanted to host in-person events, but it's feels very overwhelming. It feels like it's something that's going to be really expensive and very time consuming. And so it's something that I really pushed down the line. But then I met Ari and we started talking, and he was telling me about these in-person events that he's hosting. And he's really taken a lot of the fear out of it for me. And I'm excited to kick off on my own. And I wanted to have Ari on to really talk about how do you host an in-person event that drives business value for you without breaking the bank. So with that, Ari, should small business owners host in-person events?
100%. Businesses of all sizes should host their own event. And from what I've seen is that business owners and founders have this desire to network and meet up with other people. And to do so, they go to other ecosystems, other networks where they are one of many fighting for attention and competing with the other individuals there, hoping that they meet the right person or have the right conversation. Whereas if you flip it on its head and you become the host, you're all of a sudden that cool kid that invited everyone to a party, and you get to decide who comes, who you get to talk to, and the amount of meaningful conversations you get to have as the host is drastically different and more impactful than the number of conversations that you have going to a typical event.
Yeah, and it's interesting when you phrase it that way, because for one, I've seen that in practice. Like when I used to work for an engineering software company, there was a smaller engineering firm that specialized in a very, very niche engineering topic. And they would host this in-person event in Golden, Colorado, and they got top name brands to come out to their event because it was focused on this niche topic. And they would charge money for the event. They had sponsors, but then the host of the show was really the star, and she wasn't getting up and even talk. I don't even think that she gave a talk, but everybody wanted to talk to her at the event. And so when you host like that, it's almost like hosting your own party. When you're the host, people want to talk to you, they want to engage with you. Whereas if you show up at the party and then you have to really be an energetic, engaging person to even, get conversations with folks.
100%. Yeah. Most events put introverts at a disadvantage just because of the nature of fighting for attention. But one of the biggest differentiators between attending someone else's event versus hosting your own is that when you go to someone else's event, you have to be a go-getter. But when you host your own event, you get to be a go-giver, and givers always have more value than takers. So
I love it.
That mindset alone is you're the one that created an opportunity for your guests. That in itself positions you in a role of authority just by hosting your own event.
Okay, so I'm just going to throw some shade at you here for like the idea. I'm just thinking in terms of the questions I had, and I know the questions that other people are going to have. So I'm going to throw a couple things at you. Like, okay, hosting an in-person event, that sounds cool, but I'm like one person or a small team. That takes a ton of time, takes a ton of money. You have to have a space to host the event. So, Are those things true?
So it is unavoidable to invest your time. Like, you have to invest your time in this. Okay, that is probably the greatest resource that you will have, that business owner will have. The more you outsource, the more costly it will get, and the less amount of control that you'll have. What I can share from my experience is that when my business partner Ben Hirsch and I, we first decided to throw an event last summer. We were working on a different company together prior to TextCart, and we didn't really have much of a marketing budget. We were totally bootstrapped, but we were able to scrape together about $200. And it was last July, almost exactly a year ago. In our very first event, we got a free venue. We hosted it in Ben's mom's apartment on the Upper East Side in Manhattan. And we just cold emailed the type of people that we wanted to show up at our events, which was an event for Shopify e-commerce brand founders. And we had 16 people show up. And, it was a very warm and cozy environment. There's a lot of trust that was built. We got to have conversations, meaningful conversations with our ideal clients at the time. And we did it all within budget. We even had leftover. We realized that we overspent. We didn't need as many White Claws as we thought we did. And from there, we just started scaling, and we got other companies to join. And the next event we had, we knew we were going to have more people. So our budget went from $200 to about $350, but we split that with a sponsor. So the event only cost $175. And then we went to the next event, and we got our very first $500 sponsor, the $1,000 sponsor, $2,500, all the way up to eventually getting $5,000 sponsors. And we were traveling the US. We had events in New York, Miami, Austin, and LA. And within 10 months from that event that we had in July, all the way fast forward to this past April, we managed to host an event at the Shopify New York headquarters, where went from 16 people showing up to having 220 RSVPs with about 80 people in and out the door. Major companies were sponsoring, major brands were in attendance, and it was all completely bootstrapped.
Amazing. Okay, so it sounds like you're saying you don't need a ton of money to do it.
Not at all.
Not to start. And then what about an event location? Like, okay, so an apartment in the Upper East Side, that's that's pretty cool to have that kind of setup. So what do you do when you don't have a location like that?
So yeah, it was definitely cool. It was also very small. We're definitely a group of 16 people, do not fit all that well into a little living room, dining room connected area. But when we hosted our events in Miami, the very time we hosted an event in Miami, we went through a connection who was converting this abandoned garage into this artist community creative space. And the first time we were there, we showed up, there was some ad hoc art on the wall and repurposed furniture and carpets. And we made it work. We had about 25 people show up to the first event there. When we came back several months later for our second event in Miami, we had about 40 people show up. And by then, we had the relationship. We already had sponsors. So we paid it forward to our venue host. The first time they let us use it for free, it was a personal connection. They were happy to barter their space in return for our guests that we were bringing through the door. And when you have those relationships, you'll be able to get pretty far, because one thing that most businesses want is an audience. And if you can bring an audience, in this case are your event guests, that's a pretty powerful thing to leverage. That'll get you not only an event space, that will get you sponsored items to hand out at your event, that will give you sponsors to actually just pay you straight up to have a presence there and have them in your marketing. It'll get you even food and beverage companies to like, hey, can I be the one to donate the food or this alcoholic beverage at your event? It could take you pretty far. And it's all because you have an audience.
I love it. Yeah. And then something else you mentioned I believe in a conversation we previously had is you could do it at a coffee shop and then people could theoretically just buy their own coffee and you could work it out to have a room if you wanted to, but or you spend $200 and you get the tab and, make it super, super cheap still, but have a good location.
You can, yeah. So that's something that's very common, at least specifically in my industry, which is the e-commerce technology Shopify space. And there's like a monthly meetup. There's a monthly meetup in New York at a coffee shop. And it's just like the timing is good. People go there right before work. It's like 8 to 9 a.m. And I've been actually when I was at, there's a lot of events where you show up and it's like, hey, in return for me inviting you to this free event, please do our host a favor and spend $3, $4, $5 on a coffee while you're here. So I've never, for an event that I was hosting on my own, I've never had that model because I don't want to ask too much from our guests. I don't want it to be a give and take. I want it to be a give and give. Historically, the more I can give disproportionately to my audience, the better off it is for myself. That builds so much trust, and you're not going to be able to generate any new business for yourself without trust. So something that's very common as well is not just the coffees, but for after work hour events, particularly, there'll be happy hours at bars. And I actually co-hosted an event and emceed an event during New York Tech Week for professionals looking to leave Big Four accounting firms and go into tech. And we hosted it at a bar in New York City that wanted to get some foot traffic. And the host of the event really had a total zero budget. And in order for him to get the space, he told the guests, like, hey, please do our venue a favor and buy yourself a beer, buy yourself a water bottle, and make sure to tip the bartender. So it's very, very common, and it's a great way to definitely get your feet off the ground and do your first event if you don't have a venue that you can use at free or no cost.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's the main idea is like use your network, look for places, give a call to a couple places. And there's a lot of places that want people to know that they exist. And then if you have a budget, even something small, a couple $100, you can have the host give you the space and buy appetizers or buy drinks for people or whatever. You could have people do that if you have no budget. But then I like your idea of, hey, if you can get an actual space where there isn't food or beverage necessarily, then that really gives you the trust factor that hey, we're really here to serve you. We're hooking you guys up with appetizers, drinks, whatever. Doesn't cost that much. In fact, it might cost you less to do that and have nice charcuterie board and some drinks or whatever.
Yeah, so it's funny you mentioned charcuterie board. That's actually a big no-no for me. I have a whole scientifically proven out menu of what I serve at my events, and charcuterie performed really poorly, and
Interesting.
It was really expensive to have. I cannot take full credit for my insights and opinions on how to host an event. I'll put this out there. I actually read a book, and the author of that book is now a mentor of mine. His name is Nick Gray, and he's the founder of Museum Hack, but then authored a book called The 2-Hour Cocktail Party. If you pardon me, I'm going to go get it. It's right on my bookshelf right here.
Yeah. Absolutely.
There we go. And what's amazing about this book, 2-Hour Cocktail Party, its title is How to Build Big Relationships with Small Gatherings. So I read this book along with my business partner, Ben. And after testing out a few social gatherings for ourselves, we said, hey, there's something here in this formula that we think we could translate into business and actually make it profitable and monetize it. And that's exactly what we did. And so Nick Gray, shout out to Nick Gray. He's great. Make sure you follow his content. He's really a wizard when it comes to relationships and making people feel welcome and feeling engaged. But he has an entire system about, what days to host your events, what times, what sort of equipment that you should have, what food and beverage to have. even what your email invitations to be, should be like. It's really, really fantastic. And after reading through the book 3 times and doing over a dozen iterations, we were able to have really successful events.
Yeah, and we're going to dive here a little bit more. We kind of gone a little out of order for our questions, so but I want to dive a little bit more into the specifics of what you do. But I do want to take a second to say the reason I love this is because, from my experience so far in business, it's not your ideas, it's not your skill, it's the relationships that you have. Like, you can be mediocre at something and have great relationships, and you're going to do better than somebody who's exceptional at something and they don't have the relationships. Now, best to do both, right? Best to be exceptional at what you do, have a really good idea, but man, if you build it, they'll come and, have a great idea and all of a sudden it's going to take off. I haven't seen that to be true. I know lots of people who are, the best in their, from my perspective, they're the best in their field, and they're dirt poor and they really struggle because they don't have relationships that are driving business for them. And they're not doing that for other people either. And so then, they really lock themselves off. So I love things that make it easy to start conversations and build relationships. So just the whole premise of what I'm doing, right? It's this idea of people love to talk about themselves. They want to feel important. They want their ideas to be known. So when you reach out and say, hey, I'd love to have you on my show, you get people who would say no to anything else besides maybe coming to an in-person event. and then they come on the show, and then, you do your job right. And when you're done, they like you. And now you've got 10 or 15 minutes to have a really great conversation with them. And the results of that are incredible. Like, for clients of mine, they're getting speaking engagements, they're closing deals, they're finding mentors and advisors for their business and all that. And the reason I'm saying that isn't to pitch what I'm doing. It's to say this event, the way that you're talking about events, it's the same kind of concept. It's saying, hey, I want to give you a special invite to an exclusive event. That makes that person, and I'll let you speak to that, but that kind of is the same concept of inviting them on a show. It's, hey, you're valuable. I appreciate you. I want you to come to this exclusive event for people just like you. And then, to your point, you're being a go-giver. You're not having that person come and going, how do I pitch them? You're going, how can I add so much value to this person? And when you do that, not everybody, but a chunk of those people are going to go, hey, wait a minute. Ari, what is it that you guys do? And then they hear about it and they go, well, I don't have that problem, but my friend does, and he happens to be here. Here, let me introduce you to this person over here. And you kind of start getting that network effect and relationship. So that's why I really loved talking to you at Innovate, and why I'm excited to dive a little deeper into the details of how to do this.
You hit the nail on the head. That's exactly it. It's all about building relationships. You can't build a business. I mean, well, in some ways you can build a business from behind a computer, but it's all about having meaningful relationships and connections. And your name travels and carries, and that's a lot of weight behind your brand is your name, your reputation. And one way to do it is by giving disproportionately, and it'll take you really, really far. And events is a fantastic way to do that.
Okay, so let's make this super practical. And I'm just going to I'm going to host an in-person event in August. I have a date. I don't have a venue yet. So I'm going to host an in-person event on Wednesday, the 28th. Mm-hmm. First time I'm announcing it. It's right this second. And yeah, gotten some buzz from some other people who are in the same space as me, ultimately like serving small businesses that want to grow their business, consultants, coaches, agencies, that kind of group. So why don't we do this? Let's just talk through some of the details for an event like that. And that way we can focus the conversation instead of it being hypothetical. Let's just say, hey, we're going to talk about how to host this event in Cincinnati on Wednesday, August 28th. What do I need to think about? What are the top 2 or 3 things I need to think about this week to pull that event off?
Okay. Well, for starters, you got to know who your audience is. And just because someone wants to attend your event doesn't mean that you want them at your event. There's a certain level of homogeneity you want to have at your events, because the more like-minded people that share similar goals will create a certain energy and buzz at the event that will better propel your audience closer to what their goals are. And when your audience feels like they're getting closer to achieving their goals by being at your event, you in turn will be the one that gets the credit for that. So you really have to refine your audience. It should be more than just, oh, this is an event for small business owners. Okay, well, what kind of small businesses, right? Are they brick and mortar, or are they online businesses? Are they, solopreneurs, right? Are they family businesses? Are they in a particular industry? So that's like the first area that you want to figure out and just really drill down on the audience. So Joseph, like, who off the top of your head, if you can do this exercise with me, what is that audience member avatar, that ICP, that ideal customer, or the ideal IGP, the ideal guest profile that you have?
Yeah, I mean, it would be somebody from like a solopreneur up to maybe 5 employees, probably 10 max. So, on the very small business side, probably under 2 million for sure, probably under like 1.5 to 1 million, even on the high end.
Oh. And are these the founders of the proprietor or the CEO of the company?
Business owner, and the people who I think tend to be get the most buzz are people who have started their business because they want to provide something for their family. They want to provide for their family, but they want to be present. It's like they're leaving corporate America, or they've kind of left that the corporate world specifically to grow a business that serves them and their priorities, not to scale up and become a unicorn and sell. It's to create a business that serves their life and their priorities. And usually that's their family. And these folks tend to be consultants or coaches, or agencies. I mean, they kind of all have a very similar profile. I mean, from a consultant to an agency, the difference is just in what they actually deliver. It's not like the mode that they deliver in, but they're serving, the same kinds of clients, and typically take a similar approach to how they find folks.
Okay. So it really sounds like you're honing in on not just small business owners, but consultants.
Yeah, that'd be fair. Consultants, agencies. That's
okay. That's a good place to get at, because that particular segment of small business owners often think certain ways, and you're gonna want to fill a room with people who are diverse. They're diverse in their way of, let's say, operating a business, but they're similar in their thought and their goals. That's really important, because one of the biggest superpowers of having an event is that collective energy that your guests give to one another. And when there's a certain high achieving creative thinker that you can get into a room, regardless of what industry within consulting that they're in, you're going to witness with your own eyes the magic that happens when you're not even facilitating the event, just by the nature of these guests being in the same room together. Yeah,
I need to think of the right term, but I found that consultants and agencies in this particular vein of folks, they get along super well. And in fact, there ends up being a lot of synergy between the services that they offer, or gaps in services. I do this, I don't do this. I need to find people that can serve my clients in these ways. So if it's a group of people who are consultants and agencies, then I found when you get them in a room, they tend to not only become clients of each other, but they also tend to be able to plug that person in. So, for instance, if it's a business that does branding, they do branding, but then their clients go, well, I need a website. So then you get a website person in there, and maybe the branding agency needs a new website themselves, but then they have clients who always ask them for that. So getting those people into a room together, I've seen a ton of value from that.
Yeah, no, the network effect is really, really powerful.
Okay, so we talked about who. I know we could dig into that further, but then I'll think about that a little bit more. So let's put that to the side. Okay, so I need an event space. So what do I do to try to find an event space?
So be honest with me, Joseph. Are you going to test out a social event first, or are you jumping right into a business event?
Oh, it'd be a business event. Yeah, for sure.
Okay. So in that case, so typically So as per described and explained into our cocktail party and my own personal approach, it's always best to start with a social event, and that you could do in the comforts of your own home. But if you're jumping directly into a business event, there are certain places that I've found are willing to barter their space with their audience. So one of those types of places in particular are co-working spaces, right?
That's good.
They want to bring as many qualified professionals through their doors. So if you're having an event where all your guests are qualified professionals, a lot of times these co-working spaces have dedicated meeting rooms or spaces or a backyard. And you say, hey, I'm going to be bringing 10, 20, 30 ideal customers of yours from the greater Cincinnati area. And would you be willing to trade 2 hours of your space in a private space within the co-working space that you won't have any competition of other people walking through or playing other music in exchange for me bringing these people to your co-working space?
Yeah, I like that idea. And in fact, I know of a new co-working space that I probably have a connection
There you go.
with. So then, okay, so space, that's a great idea. I love that. So what are some other considerations that I need to have for an event like that?
In terms of a venue?
No, so we'll say, let's just so we
Right.
can keep moving along. Yeah,
Okay.
I mean, co-working space, I guess another few places would be
Yeah.
probably talking to people that are Chamber of Commerce president, and they're probably going to have some ideas. You could kind of go that route if your audience spends time there. Yeah, I'm sure there's a lot, there's other places that serve businesses or even, yeah, anyway.
Yeah.
So let's say, okay, now we found a space. What are some other things that you need to consider before launching an event like that?
Okay, so you've now established who your audience is. You have the space. You now have to figure out how you're going to get your ideal guests to your space. How are you going to invite them? And so to quote Nick Gray, who doesn't like getting invited to a party? Right? Actually, the way that he was able to get guests to his first social events when he moved to a new city was he went to Trader Joe's, went up to complete strangers like, hey, you want to come to my party? People love parties, right? So that's where you have to get creative with your marketing and outreach. So the most simplistic ways can be by inviting your inner circle that you already know, the people that support you and love what you do and are willing to show up just to be there because they love Joseph Lewin and they love sellthroughsocial.com and they want to they feel like there's something to get out of that. That's called your inner circle. That's the first place to start. But then after that, well, you ideally want to make a list of every single person in your region that you think would benefit from your event. Not who you want to sell to per se, but usually there's a correlation between hopefully that the people that you invite to your guests are also the people that you can theoretically sell to. So if you have that ICP, that ideal customer profile, make a list of every single person and just start contacting them. I started doing that via cold email, just sending one email at a time. And since then, I've been able to scale using automated cold email. But the beauty of it all is that people often have told me, oh, I don't like getting spammed, or it just seems so sketchy getting an invitation out of the blue. It's like, no, people love parties. Invite them. You're inviting from a giving mindset, and with the appropriate messaging and subject line and copy, you can explain how this event is for your own benefit. And if it's free, all the more so. You're going to get a lot of people to start showing up. So yes, after that, you got to start inviting people and invite heavy. Usually a turnout can be from, you'll get anywhere from, let's say, a 25 to 60% turnout rate from the amount of people that just RSVP. So keep that in mind when doing your numbers, right? So if you have 100 people that RSVP to your event, you can get anywhere from, let's say, 25 to 60 people to show up.
Yeah, something that's interesting that just popped in my mind would be you can go to your inner circle, find the people who are just like raving fans of yours or excited. And I mean, there's a few people that I've been loosely partnering with. It's like nothing official, but we've been kind of working together. We sent each other folks, and already a few of them were interested. So if it's somebody who is awesome and they serve the same kinds of folks, and hey, there'd be some major mutual benefit if we can each bring people. You could go, hey, do you think you could get 5 people to come and get them, each of those people to commit to bringing a few folks themselves, and then you could do like a +1 for certain of those people who are like
Correct.
key, but they're not like those. They're not necessarily going to partner in the event with you, but they're like, key people, and give them a +1, and that would make them feel like, oh wow,
Yeah. So
I get to bring somebody with me.
Exactly. So +1s are really powerful, and it's something I get asked a lot. Oh, hey, like, this sounds awesome. Thank you for inviting me. Can I bring my business partner? Can I bring my wife? Can I bring my friend who also is in the same space? So I always say yes, as long as they are there for the right reasons. So before I get to what the right and wrong reasons of why one would show up to an event, I want to just kind of break your heart a little bit from my personal experiences when you lean on other guests of yours, or let's say people that are willing to help host, to bring guests to your event. Historically, it doesn't work well. Most people, if someone, for example, someone like you who does give disproportionately, most people will not match that energy.
Yeah.
I've had people say, oh yeah, like, I'll be a co-sponsor and then I'll make sure to bring at least 15 people. They don't. And the ones that they do bring are not going to be the same quality. So it's really best that whoever is the person in charge. So for your event, you're going to be the gatekeeper. You want to be in charge of inviting who comes, because the last thing you want to have are guests that decrease the value of your event. And that's where at least
that makes
the next
sense.
segment. If I could just share, there's 2 people that show up to events, people to gain and people to take. So something that I tell people is, if I'm at your event, watch out. You don't want me there. I'm at events to sell, yes, to network. But if I'm coming to your event, that means that I've identified that your guests are worth my time to sell to also. You don't want to have people like me who are going to be selling to your guests. It kills the energy. It kills the vibes, because guests don't want to be pitched to. They want to come to an event to learn. So there's an entire vetting process that you should keep in mind of, like, well, is this person who RSVP'd, are they coming to gain, or are they coming because they think that they can pick off and poach my guests to sell on for themselves? So that's something that you have to be very cautious about.
Okay, so that kind of brings us into an interesting point that I know you've talked about before. Okay, so now we've invited our guests. I know there's way more involved, but we want to save some stuff for people who want to contact you and work with you on doing an event or whatever. So I'm not trying to get you to give all your secret sauce. Just kind of wanted to walk through this in a way that it's like making it practical as people are working through it. So, you've got your all of your templates and things that you've used to do that, and people want that. They should reach out to you and get that. But then, let's take it down the next level. Okay, so we've identified the types of people that we want. We've identified a space. We've been, figured out how we're going to reach them. You could use Sales Navigator and send emails. You could reach people through LinkedIn that are already in your network. You could cold email, you could cold call. There's tons of ways you could reach out. And then it's, same kind of idea. You're offering them something of extreme value. So you're not reaching out to them to pitch them. You're reaching out to them to give them access to an exclusive party of people that if they get invited, they're going to grow their business or have opportunity that comes from it. So if they say no, it's their loss in that case. And so it's different than like cold calling to pitch your product. You're cold calling to invite them because you think that they're going to really benefit, right? So we've gotten that far. Then how do you recommend, and we'll leave like food and all of that, like you kind of touched on it, but if people want to know more about the science behind that and exactly what they should do, you should reach out to Ari, because, well worth working with him on that stuff. But then when it comes to actually running the event, there's a lot of different ways that people do it. Sometimes it's like, hey, we're bringing in speakers. Sometimes it's breakout networking groups, and all this stuff. And I know you have some particular opinions about that. So you get the group together, you're there. What is the typical loose order of events?
So the general structure is as follows. All events should be 2 hours long after work, ideally starting at either 6 or 7 p.m., which means that the event runs from 6 to 8 or 7 to 9. The order of events is as follows. You have a initial portion, which is just general natural networking and mingling amongst the guests. Then there is a icebreaker session in which groups are formed and with guidance and curated questions, and enables the guests to communicate with one another. After that icebreaker, you go back to general networking. But after that, having the icebreaker done already, people have had the opportunity to listen to their group people and hear what people are sharing. And now it kind of gives them motivation to pick up conversations of what they heard. So that second round of natural mingling is a little bit higher value, because in these icebreaker sessions, everyone's in a circle, and I can go into, how to do an icebreaker session, privately, but there's so many like bells that go off in people's heads, like, oh, this person mentioned marketing, oh, this person mentioned creative, this person mentioned copy, then those conversations happen. So then after that second round of mingling, there is a second icebreaker in which the groups are rotated, so people get to meet an even greater number of people.
Okay.
Then after that, the event concludes with one final general mingling. So it's 3 mingling sessions with 2 icebreakers in between.
Okay.
And the most important thing, Joseph, I'm being serious with this. After the icebreaker, the most important thing is to have a group photo. You have to take a group photo. Do not forget, August 28th, make sure you have that group photo ready.
After the second icebreaker.
Actually, before the second icebreaker, yes. There's a whole psychology behind, retaining certain attention levels amongst adults in business settings. So there's a very short window where you can tell adults what to do and where to go. So you have to be very, very efficient.
I love it. So, okay. So there's some things that are noticeably missing from that, and I'd love for you to elaborate on that. So there's no opportunity for people to like share or speak. So then when it comes to, first of all, I think that, I get the idea of, hey, look, you're hosting the event. People are going to talk to you. You're going to get exposure. You're going to get opportunities through that. But then if you have a sponsor, let's say, or you have somebody who goes, hey, I love this, I'm going to work with you on it. Let's do this together. What's the value for somebody who is doing that that's not you?
So this is where I throw conventional wisdom out the window, and I've seen success doing my own things. People think that in order to be heard, you need to speak. Rather, what's more important is to shut up and listen. So at our events, we have a policy where we do not allow three Ps: no panels, no pitching, and no promotion. The MC of the event is the organizer and the person that guides the flow of the event, but there's no pitching. People come to the event for themselves. The last thing they want to do is listen to someone else. Yes, there are instances where there's a very interesting speaker and they have something unique and insightful to share, but actually there's a picture that went viral earlier this year. I believe it was at South by Southwest in Austin, Texas, where Mark Cuban was in a major conference room and he was the main speaker and it was totally empty. How is it that Mark Cuban had like a dozen people listening to him at a conference with over 100,000 people? Because at the end of the day, no matter how important you are, people care about themselves more. Yep. So if you can flip the attention from what people think it should be, which is a sponsor, but actually flip the attention to your guests, it's very, very powerful. And there are certain ways where you can hype up and promote your sponsor without pitching it. But I've seen this too often. I was actually at an event last night in the city, and there's 45 minutes worth of discussions, which is really 45 minutes of pitching by the sponsor. And I do this at every event. I look around, how many people are on their phones? And they lose interest. But what I do is I tell our sponsors, like, hey, I'm going to bring 40 decision makers from your ideal customer profile to my event. I'll be doing the introductions. I'm going to be giving you the opportunity to have a high volume of conversations with them. So one way we do that is when we have our icebreakers, we make our sponsor a group leader. So rather than them having to pitch to a room of however many people, if they're leading an icebreaker, they now get to listen to the problems and needs of, let's say, a dozen people in their group. But this is the magic equation. We all know that everyone is there as a potential client. So it's way more powerful to listen to the needs of your customers than try to pitch them. And then by the time it comes around, people have already shared what their needs are. and you've been able to listen to the conversation. And then eventually people ask, oh, by the way, what is it that you do, Joseph? You say, well, actually, I'm able to help small businesses and consultants do 1, 2, and 3. It's like, oh my gosh, I'm a business consultant that needs help with 1, 2, or 3. And then it's a match.
That makes sense. So in other words, you're not breaking off into little groups and everybody goes and pitches each other. It's not like speed dating. But when you're saying no pitching,
I'm personally against that.
Yeah,
People don't want to be pitched.
Then it's more, I mean, this is exactly the same stuff that I tell people when hosting a show. Like when you're done with the show, you don't go, hey, yeah, and by the way, here's what I do. Let's get on a call and work together on how I could help you launch a show. It's like, will you close some business that way? You will, but you're going to miss out on referrals. You're going to miss out on, all the peripheral benefits, and miss out on probably at least half, if not more, of the people that you could have worked with anyway, by simply going something like, man, I was looking at your website and it's super interesting that you guys do XYZ. Just get them to talk for a little bit. And then, whoa, what are some of the biggest challenges you guys are facing? They talk about their challenges. And then if it makes sense, it's okay at some point to go, man, I actually help people with XYZ. Would it make sense to schedule a call to talk about that? But now we've built rapport. I've had them on the show. They like me. They've talked about themselves after the show. And then even the amount of times where that happens is rare, because more often than not, people go, oh man, this is great. Man, tell me more about what you do at Sell Through Social. And then I tell them about what I do. And they go, oh, I don't need that. But there's a friend of mine who has been trying to launch a show forever. Let me make an intro for you. And so then it's, what I see happens, and I think it's probably similar, is it's not always the person that you have on the show that becomes a client. But I've had more people that have come on my show than not who introduced me to at least one, and as many as 5 to 8 people after I've met them one time on the show. And it's because I wasn't pitching them. I'm adding value to them. And similar to you, you're listening and you're gaining trust. And then the opportunities come to you. And I mean, you do have to be intentional. And I think you're naturally a salesperson, and I've kind of grown in sales. So if you're total introvert, you never pitch yourself at all. You might have to be a little bit more forward than you would normally like at a certain point, you go, hey, I think I could help you with that. That's okay. But you're not leading with that. You're not there to be aggressive and close a deal. You're there to build a relationship and serve. And then most of the time you just let the deals come to you, and they happen naturally.
Correct. And it's all about finding that perfect balance of, like you really emphasized, not selling to people. People don't want to be sold to, right? That's number one. It's one of the biggest turnoffs. And after that, it's really about having meaningful conversations. And the terminology that I came up with is intentional attention, right? Not all attention is equal. And when you are able to create a welcoming, vulnerable, accepting environment where business professionals get to talk, where they don't feel like they're getting sold to, the secrets come out and the walls come down, and even the biggest introverts can thrive. I've had examples where people prefaced with me like, oh, I don't want to come to your event. I'm not a people person. And then they come, and they've even said, this is the first event I've been to in 4 years. I suffer from chronic anxiety, and this was amazing. So there's no unfair advantage for extroverts versus introverts when you create an environment that's conducive for cultivating meaningful relationships. I think you're on mute, Joseph.
Thank you. Thank you for bringing that up. I really totally agree with you, and I've seen the same idea with starting a show. People are like, "Oh, I'm an introvert. I can't get on camera. I can't do that." But then once they've done it once or twice, they get to actually have a real, meaningful, genuine conversation with the person on the other end. So it's not for introverts. It's kind of interesting because I think people would think of me probably more as an extrovert, and there's certain settings where I can be, but when it comes to group events, especially, I would be one of those people. And I've learned how to do it, but the first probably 10 times I've gone to events or networking events, it's so awkward. I didn't know how to start a conversation. You don't know how to do it. Then you get around these people who are super aggressive salespeople, and they're going to corner you, and it's super awkward. So if you're an introvert, you're like, run away. Yeah. But when you can facilitate people to have real, genuine one-on-one conversations, I think that's the part that really gives introverts the ability to thrive. Because it's not that they hate talking to people. It's that they don't know it. A lot of times it's that they don't know what to do with themselves when there's no structure, and you're just like having these random, pitch yourself in 20 seconds. But when it's like, hey, here's an opportunity, everybody's sharing something, it really opens up and kind of levels the playing field. So I love that.
Yeah, I'm glad that means a lot to you, because that value will be palpable at your event. People will feel the difference. And one thing that drove me to start hosting my own events was that I was at too many events that were just bad.
Yeah.
Right? How many times have we been in a room with 100 people, 1,000 people, and felt like we were the only one there? No one to talk to. There's no guidance. Everything was uncomfortable. People don't like that. And people conflate that a big event or a posh event or a nice event or a flashy event is a good event, but that's not true. And that's actually something I always emphasize is, what is a good event? What is a successful event? So I want to hear what you think, Joseph, what you think the definition of a successful event would be for yourself in Cincinnati.
I mean, I would just say if it's generated real meaningful conversations that lead to business opportunity. And I'm not necessarily saying sales. It's just if it's something that helps me grow my business, it helps other people grow their business. And that isn't always a direct sale. It's a new vendor partner, a new, getting some advice from somebody, even getting inspired about your business. Like one of my clients I talked to this week, he's like, hey, we're 4 weeks into this, launching a show. I think he's done 3 or 4 episodes. And he's like, look, I haven't closed a deal through this process yet. And it's like, oh, okay, yeah, it's been 30 days. It usually takes a little bit of time, but he's like, it's been totally worth it for me because it's made me feel excited about my business. Like there's momentum in my business and it's giving me something to look forward to as I'm growing the business, rather than just kind of sitting there and, not knowing what to do, not knowing what action to take. So if I can create an event where people have that experience, that would be successful. I think what's interesting with that too is that you and I just went to this event with Brian Wallace Innovate, and it was awesome. Like I would say that was a great event because I met a bunch of great people who I've already, had multiple people on the show and have made some amazing connections through that. So, yeah.
Yeah, 100%. And that was a fantastic event to be at. And like I mentioned in the beginning of this live event, I mentioned just the quality of person that showed up, and it really made a positive impact and an amazing difference in the event just by having good people there. And I think kudos to you, because when I asked you the question about what a successful event is, you said, yeah, well, there's success in mine, but also success for my guests. And that's the most important component, where you're not losing sight of who the most important component of the event, which is your guests. Without your guests, you don't have an event. You won't have any success.
Yeah. And it's, I know I've already said this a bunch of times, but this is why I really wanted to have you on, because the similarity between what you're talking about and what I'm teaching people how to do is so similar. Because it's one thing that people always go is, well, when do I talk about my product? And it's like, you don't have to, like, ever. My show is not about sell through social at all. Now I've started to do a little bit of a promo when I have something really specific coming up, and that's fine, but it's like 15 seconds. And, I'm not even usually talking about my company. I'm usually not talking that much about what I do. I'm focused on the guest, them, what they're bringing to the table. And in the majority of my shows, I haven't mentioned anything about what I do. I'm really bringing it up more in this episode because the parallels are so similar that I'm like, man, if you've started running a show, like if you're a client of mine and you've been running a show, the next iteration after you get that going is to start doing in-person events. And then you tie those together. You have people you've had as guests come to your in-person event. And you know what's going to happen? Oh my gosh, the synergy once you've had somebody on a show, when you meet them in person, is completely unreal. It's bonkers. Anyway, Ari, we could go on for a long time. I told you 20 to 30 minutes for the show, and we're at 49.
Whoops.
So I'm going to go ahead and call it here. But man, thank you so much for coming on. This is super insightful. And man, if anybody's thinking of doing an in-person event, reach out to Ari, have him help you out, because he really knows what he's doing, and he's just a great dude. So definitely reach out to Ari, connect with him, and look forward to talking to you again.
Thank you for having me, Joseph. This was great.